Hello again, book lovers, and welcome to this review of Ancient Worlds, an epic history of East and West by Michael Scott. So we begin in what is sometimes called the Axial Age. We're talking about 700s BC to 400s BC. The second part of the book takes us from 300 BCE-ish to 126 BCE. And part 3 finally crosses the bridge from BCE to CE, and we end up with the story of Constantine, Chandragupta in India, Visigoths, Huns, the collapse of the Roman Empire, and the entrance of Christianity into that empire. A little pause here to look at the endorsements. Peter Frankopan, author of The Silk Roads, recommends it, so I'm going to recommend his Silk Roads, an excellent book, I thought. Bettany Hughes also gives it the thumbs up, as does Tom Holland. As far as Tom Holland goes, I would say, just read Tom Holland. Anyway, Michael Scott is our author today, and he takes us on a long haul, which not only takes us from hundreds of years before Christ, but also takes in the whole of the map. Let's say starting from Carthage in North Africa, and if we go up, we go to Rome, and all the way across there, across the Mediterranean, across the Seleucid Empire, the Parthians, the Bactrians, towards the Mauryaans, at least at the beginning, in India with the first Chandragupta, all across the Himalayas, to the territories of the Yuezhi tribes, the Xiongnu tribes, the Donghu tribe, landing finally in what was the Eastern Zhou dynasty and is now known as China, at least in its expanded form. So that's a lot to take in, isn't it? And there's so many things happening on every page. This is a reread, I should say, but I managed to forget almost everything in it as the information content is very high. And its thesis is the melding of the East and the West, the Axial Age bringing about the great thinkers independently, but the Silk Roads eventually uniting the Mediterranean with China. Each of these histories, of course, would take thousands of books on its own. It's incredible the amount of history we know about these old periods, especially from places as far off from our perspective as China and India. The book focuses on politics, in part 1, how Athenian democracy came to be, how the Republic was instituted in Rome, quite a lot of stuff about the Romans sending missions to Greece to see how things worked over there and try to make a decent copy, and China in the era of Confucius. Part 2 is called War and a World in Change, and part 3 is called Religious Change in a Connected World. Pretty self-explanatory. Especially the further you go back, I see history as a jigsaw puzzle with many pieces missing. And this is a book that fills in a lot of pieces on my jigsaw puzzle, as I didn't really know much about, let's be honest, the history of Armenia, but it turns out to be pretty important. We meet Tiridates the king, the excursions of Gregory from Rome to try to Christianize Armenia, how it all turned out. Armenia is singled out as it's a kind of crossroads between the expanding Christian empire and paganism. In between the stories of Hannibal and Constantine and the Ptolemies, we get descriptions of what was actually happening between India and the Mediterranean. Alexander's armies had marched over that far and left a kind of Grecianized culture behind in what was then Bactria, we could say Afghanistan these days. We can be forgiven for not knowing about the flights of the Wusun tribe and the Sakas and the Sogdiana, but it's very interesting to piece together all these goings on pretty much through the eyes of historians of the time, Polybius being a case in point. In fact, the very beginning of the book is excellent, as Mr. Scott begins with a travelogue made by Megasthenes, who travelled 300 BCE to India, and tells us of the fantastic sights that he saw there. Some of them believable, some of them not. But there it is, a kind of first contact. We also learn of the first event that was described in both Eastern and Western histories. And we have an excellent finale following the fate of Constantine and his successors and the various internecine battles. You get the picture. It's more Tudor England stamped all over the world. I've seen podcasts and read internet comments which are very critical of this book, but I don't care. I'm not a professional historian. I thought the same as Peter Frankopan, who is a professional historian, who said, "A bold and imaginative page-turner that challenges ideas about the world of antiquity." That's fair enough.